Good afternoon. Welcome to our second congressional briefing on family and youth homelessness in the wake of COVID-19. This is part of a virtual congressional briefing series in collaboration with the Congressional Caucus on Homelessness. My name is Barbara Duffield. I am the Executive Director of SchoolHouse Connection. Next slide, please. This briefing is co-hosted by 4 national organizations: SchoolHouse Connection, the National Network for Youth, First Focus Campaign for Children, and Family Promise. Next slide, please. A little bit about the logistics for the webinar. If you have a question, please enter your questions in the questions pane and click send to all so that we can see your questions. We should have time at the end for any questions for our expert panelists. You do have materials in the handouts panel. There is there's a PowerPoint as well as some policy handouts as well in the handouts panel. And please know that if you've signed up for the webinar, you'll receive a link to the recording in an email after the webinar is over. Next slide, please. So just to begin, a little bit of framing. Prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, public schools across the country and early childhood programs identified the highest number of children and youth experiencing homelessness on record. Our public schools, pre-K through 12, identified 1.5 million children and youth experiencing homelessness. Early childhood programs identified 1.4 million. And we know there are many youth and young adults who are not in school and aren't accounted for those numbers. We do expect that these numbers to increase in the wake of the health and the economic crises caused by COVID-19. So our organizations are hosting these three unique briefings to learn more about family and youth homelessness from the experts, those who've lived or are living through homelessness, and those who are on the front lines providing services through education and through shelters and other programs. This past Tuesday, we heard from youth and young adults. Next week, we'll hear from service providers and educators. And today, we will hear from parent experts who will share their insights. We're also thrilled to be joined by 2 members of Congress, U.S. Representative Danny Davis and U.S. Representative Steve Stivers. I see, looking on the attendees, let's just see if Mr. Stivers has joined yet. I'm in. See him joined yet. You're in, all right. Hello, Mr. Stivers, how are you?
Good.
It's our pleasure to welcome you today. We're so grateful for your leadership on homelessness, and we're especially grateful for your work to address the gaps in homeless assistance and housing policies for children, youth, and families. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And, I really appreciate having a chance to be on the call. And I want to thank everybody for being on this call and everything you're doing, because your individual stories, hearing individually from people, from families who are impacted, from children and parents impacted by youth homelessness, can make a difference for policymakers and their willingness to get involved. I know the pandemic has exacerbated many of the disparities that we were already struggling with in this country, and family and youth homelessness is certainly no exception. As the ranking member on the subcommittee on housing, community development, and insurance, one of my top priorities is ensuring that families don't lose their home as a result of the coronavirus, and making sure that families and youth who are homeless can get access to the programs that can help them, because a home is so important toward everything we do in life. And people who experience youth homelessness are less likely to graduate from high school, more likely to end up in prison, more likely to end up with a teen pregnancy, less likely to graduate from college or even go to college, and less likely to get a job. So it is such a pervasive issue that impacts so many other parts of people's lives. And I think it's important that we pay special care to young people who right now, many of them don't have a classroom or teachers or counselors to go to. And as we all know, because the Department of Housing and Urban Development doesn't define homelessness to include youth, it's the Department of Education that has been filling that gap to help us identify youth homelessness so much more. And without schools being in session so many places, and now with the summer, we don't have that, and it's creating extra problems for people that are experiencing youth homelessness. You know, I'm proud to be the sponsor of the Homeless Children and Youth Act because, again, there's so many young people out there who are experiencing homelessness but not counted. So they're the invisible homeless population. Some estimates show that could be as high as 1.3 million people, young people who are homeless but are not included in the definition of homelessness under the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we need to take time to identify and help young people who are struggling and ensure that people on the front lines have resources to help these folks. And that's why I'll continue to advocate for solutions for these people, like the Foster Stable Housing Opportunities Act. You know, all too often we see young folks transition from foster care into homelessness because they can't even register for any housing assistance until after they are out of the foster care system. And in many cases, they are forced to be homeless. That is a tragic, tragic situation that we know we can fix. And Mike Turner's bill would fix it. That bill has passed the House, and it's important that we get that signed into law. And I want to make sure we do that. We know another powerful tool on ending youth homelessness is the Family Unification Program. I'm proud to advocate for funding for that important initiative that helps combat homelessness among foster youth and prevent family separation due to homelessness. So there's so much more we can all do. By the way, Danny Davis is a great champion for homelessness. He happens to be a Democrat. I happen to be a Republican, but I respect his record and his work on behalf of homeless folks all around this country. And he's been at it much longer than I have. And I certainly respect everything and look forward to working with him and all of you as we move forward to try to solve the problem of homelessness for youth and families. Thank you for including me today, and I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know if that's in the format, but if anybody has questions and that works, I'm happy to do that when it's an appropriate time.
Thank you so much, Congressman Stivers. We greatly appreciate your leadership. I know it's been a long time working on the Homeless Children and Youth Act, and we'll continue to push forward with that and the other bills that you mentioned as well. I now want to turn and introduce Congressman Danny Davis, a longtime champion of children, youth, and families experiencing homelessness, and especially on the fight to increase resources for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act and for the Education for Homeless Children and Youth program. Thank you, Congressman Davis, for joining us today. We are so grateful for your leadership.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to be here today with all of you. Especially am I pleased to be with Representative Stivers, and I commend him for the outstanding work he has done in this arena, and I thank him for his very kind remarks. First of all, let me thank SchoolHouse Connections, the National Network for Youth, First Focus, and Family Promise for holding this wonderful series of briefings. I'm especially pleased to join you today because Chicagoan Julie Campos is speaking about her experiences, and I look forward to hearing her insights. For me, homelessness is more than a housing issue. Given that there are multiple risk factors for homelessness, we need multifaceted policies to address it. As the chair of the Subcommittee on Worker and Family Support within the Committee on Ways and Means, and as the co-chair of the Education and Labor Task Force for the Congressional Black Caucus, I have focused my homelessness policy effort on improving tax, education, child welfare, and workforce policies, in addition to increasing housing. Even before the pandemic, homelessness, especially for youth and families, was increasing. Now, during the pandemic, our nation faces an exponential increase in homelessness that we must prevent. Given that homelessness in early childhood can have lifetime consequences, Congress must limit the harm caused to children by intervening early. I'm proud to have worked with many other policymakers to address homelessness during the pandemic. For example, I worked with Representative Yorri and Bacon to dramatically increase funding for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, the Education for Homeless Children and Youth Act, and the Family Stabilization Act. I advocated with Representative Walorski and Yorri to remove barriers to homeless and foster youth to get in their economic impact statements. And just last week, Ranking Member Walorski and I successfully got flexibilities for homeless and foster youth in college in documenting their income so that they could complete their financial packages. The bottom line is that we need to recognize how families and youth actually experience homelessness, and policymakers must invest substantial resources now to help stabilize and support these families and young people. I am especially eager to hear about the experiences of our young panelists, because if anybody knows what it's like, they do, you do. I'm proud to be a part of this effort. Thank you very much, and I look forward to listening.
Thank you very much, Congressman Davis, Congressman Stivers, for joining us today. We're proud to work with you to advance holistic policy solutions for our children, our youth, and our families who are experiencing homelessness. So now I'd like to introduce Ms. Yorri Berry, who is the Director of Youth Partnerships for the National Network for Youth, and Ms. Berry will moderate the discussion with our parent experts. Muted, you're muted.
Muted. If you could also unmute Julie, if that's possible. But thank you, Barbara. And I also want to thank Congressman Davis and Congressman Stivers for your leadership and for being a champion in transforming policies to support all people who are experiencing homelessness in this country, especially parents and children. And I'm excited to moderate this conversation with April Good, Destiny Hodges, Julie Campos, and Freda Mason, 4 incredible parent experts, courageous enough to share both their lived experiences and recommendations for lawmakers. So we're just gonna get right into it, starting with April, followed by Destiny, Julie, and Freda. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and your story.
Hi, this is April. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm an African-American female born and raised in the inner city in the DMV, Washington, D.C. area. I am a mother of 9. I am 40 years old. I am just coming out of homelessness. I became homeless after being displaced from leaving Florida. I was married. I'll take you back a bit before I got there. Like I said, I grew up in the DC area. I did not have parents. I was a foster kid myself. I was completely lost. Needless to say, at about 31, I decided that I was going to pack my life up. I moved to Florida, did something different, and have been advocating and been a social advocate in Florida for the last 8 years. Never expected to experience, started civic organizations, adopted streets, and have been completely advocating for everyone and every policy I could think of socially and economically where I just came from. And in 6 months, my life flipped upside down. I lost my home, I lost my marriage. I relocated to New Jersey thinking that I was getting into a better situation for myself, and then everything went awry. I have 4 minor children that are with me, and needless to say, I ended up homeless in the dead of winter in New Jersey with no family, no options, just devastating homelessness to the point where we were sleeping in a vehicle. Ended up in hotel placement, and it's been a whirlwind from there. I know we only have 2 minutes, so I'll give someone else time to share.
Destiny. Tell us about yourself, your family, and your story.
You entered no digit.
You're muted. Julie, can you hear me? Julie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about yourself, your family, and your story, and then hopefully Destiny will be unmuted to go after.
Okay. Well, my name is Julie Campos. I have a 1-year-old. His name is Miguel. I live in Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. I actually started experiencing homelessness when I got pregnant. And I got pregnant because my stepfather had been abusing me since the age of 13. So when my mother found out, she kicked me out, and she found out when I was 8 months pregnant. So I was already like very far along. She didn't care about anything that had happened, so she kicked me out. And I ended up going to a shelter called the Night Ministry, which was really like helpful towards me, but it really like messed me up because I had never experienced homelessness before, and it was really hard for me for it to be while I was pregnant and having no communication at all with my mom or my sister at all, and just seeing my mom still have a relationship with her husband was really hard for me. And I was still trying to go to school. So I was a full-time student at Harold Washington College. I'm trying to get a major in early childhood education. That's one of my main goals. I want to become a teacher. And I just want to, be an example for my 1-year-old because he's the only person that I feel like is looking up to me right now. So, yes.
Thank you for that, Julie. Destiny, can you hear me now? We can't hear you, and I'm not sure why.
I'm gonna do a couple things that hopefully will help. Just a second here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if that makes a difference. Destiny, let's try again.
We still can't hear you. We'll go to Freda. We'll come back to you. We will get to you. We will get to your story. We're going to figure this out. But Freda, if you could just tell us a brief introduction.
Hey, good afternoon. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Freda Mason. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I just turned 38 this past Tuesday. I'm a mother of 5 children. 17-year-old girl is my oldest, and I have 4 boys, one 13, one 11, one 9, and one 6. Well, my past life, I actually grew up in a foster home, but I made it out of that terrible situation, and I ended up graduating from high school. I graduated from college. I started my own childcare business, and that's how I was getting my income. I was actually very successful. I completed some of my goals. I was in 9 movies, which was a big thing for me because that's what I always wanted to do. I had a good life until I hit the age of 35, and my uncle passed away in my home. So when he died in my house, it sent me into a depression. After that, I kind of like lost it a little bit. I lost my job and I ended up losing my apartment. By me paying market rent, it was hard for me to get another apartment. Everybody was always saying the eviction got to be 3 years old. So I ended up becoming homeless, going from house to house, hotels, sleeping in the car or whatnot. And right now, I'm still currently homeless, basically kind of due to COVID-19. And I'm just hoping all of this COVID goes away.
Thank you, Freda. Destiny, we have you now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, finally. Welcome, welcome. Tell us about yourself, your story, anything that you just want to share.
My name is Destiny Hodges. I love school. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I have one 9-month-old daughter. Her name is Kelly. I'm recently enrolled at Delgado Community College. I was in foster care and I became homeless at 17 from my foster parents who adopted me at 11. And I was experiencing secret abuse in the home, sexually and mentally, and I was just really like fed up with it. So I had to leave. So I went to stay with a friend. That was horrible. Then I had to graduate from high school from my friend's house. And then after that, I was working job here and there. I moved, I came back, and I was just really running around, living pillow to post until something kind of set my spirit and said, go to Covenant House. And Covenant House is the only youth organization in New Orleans. People from like Thibodeau, Louisiana, and Gonzales has to come all the way from out there to come out here because it's the only youth shelter in Louisiana. And me being at the Covenant House gave me a lot of peace with myself, and I found myself. I was very depressed when I came here though, because me being in the shelter really made me kind of sad. But I had to raise a daughter, and I was 6 months pregnant, so I had to just swallow all of that. And also, I did get help with housing at the Covenant House. So yeah.
Thank you, Destiny. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into your stories. April, if you could share with us a bit about your homelessness experience before the pandemic. April, I'm not sure if you're speaking, but if you are, you're definitely muted. The sound is not on
Okay,
our
I'm
side.
here. I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Sorry. So pre-COVID, once I became homeless, I was staying with a friend who was living in a relative's home who the home was sold. So that immediately, like I said, the person who owned the house passed away. It was willed to someone else, so that left myself and my 4 children homeless. And like I said, in the dead of winter in New Jersey. And unfortunately, because I had not had a prevalent history, except for, well, of course, when I was younger and a minor, but I haven't had a prevalent history of being homeless, it affected me negatively, so unbelievably so. I could not get help because I was not on drugs. I could not get help because I was not beaten or battered. I could not get help because my children did not have health or mental disabilities. And so all the things that I would think would take me a step further because I am okay mentally, my kids are okay and they can function, none of those things were to any benefit to get help. There's this national hotline that you call, and once you tell them these things, it places you lower and lower on the list, even though I had nowhere to go, nowhere to be. Not having any sort of disability, not being drug addicted, was held against me. And so I was denied benefits because I did not meet the criteria that was, set in place, I guess, in the state of New Jersey. And it was just unbelievable. And I mean, I became completely, depressed. I finally ended up getting hotel placement. When I got hotel placement, they placed myself and 4 children in a one room with 2 beds with no kitchen, no access to a local grocery store. I had no vehicle. It was freezing. Where's the local pharmacy? None of that information is given or shared with you. You're just, placed. I was placed about 45 minutes from where my children went to school with no vehicle. And even though the school system is supposed to pick your kids up, because that's the homeless law for children, that didn't matter. That's still a process. So for 2 weeks, I had to figure out how to get my kids back and forth 45 minutes from their school until transportation got set in place, which it eventually did. But that stopgap, it was devastating to my children. They were completely disgusted with me. They had lost hope in me. They lost faith in me. And this was all, pre-COVID. Like I said, there was no kitchen. There was, no local grocery store. It was just, terrible access. But had I had a disability, I could have been on another list. Had my kids had a disability or I've been beaten, I could have been placed somewhere. But because I was employable and I didn't have those issues, all of those items were held sort of against you in seeking placement.
Thank you, April, for sharing. And during this time, I hear you saying that, you had to figure out a lot of these things on your own. Were there any supports in place? Were there any programs or people that were able to assist you or your children during this time?
Unfortunately, not as of yet, because until you can be deemed needy of the help or till you can prove you need the help, you don't have access to the programs. You have to be able to receive benefits. So say, for instance, cash assistance and food stamps, you have to be approved for those things before the agencies and the programs are allowed to help you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Julie, to you, tell us a little bit about your homelessness experience prior to the pandemic, and any supports that were available or in place to help you. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Like I said before, I got kicked out from my mom's house when I was 8 months pregnant. So I actually had texted my high school teacher, my English teacher, and I told him about like what I was going through. He was the one that told me about the shelter that I was at. And I got really lucky with the shelter that I went to because I made like incredible friendships, incredible relationships, but it was still really hard for me, especially because I was only pregnant for a week when I got to the shelter, a week after I had my baby. So being with my newborn at a shelter was really hard for me. And I was trying, like, I went back to school the semester right after I had him. So like I put my baby in daycare when he was like 2 months. And, as a first parent, it was really hard for me because I didn't want to leave my baby alone and I didn't have anybody to take care of him. So I didn't know whether I should go back to school or not. But luckily I had very good like relationship with the people from the shelter I was at. I found him his daycare, but being homeless and being with a newborn was 2 things that I never want to ever experience again. And it was really hard. I was in that shelter for 6 months. So my baby spent his first 6 months of life in a shelter with no family, and it was just really hard for me. But after those 6 months, I got pulled for housing. I currently live in my own apartment with my baby, but it's still hard because now, because of the pandemic, we can't really have any like visitors or help or anything. And I feel like a lot of the times people from the building that I live in, we don't get as much help. But before the pandemic, my experience was I feel like not as bad because of the help that I received from the shelter and different organizations that I got help from. So I was very lucky in that like place where I did have like people to help me, and I didn't feel like I was as alone as I actually was.
Thank you for sharing. And you said different organizations help you. Which organizations were able to help you during that period?
So I actually I joined this organization called New Moms, which is an organization for moms where I would go to like parent classes every week, and I was able to get like free diapers or free baby wipes or free formula if I needed it. I also joined this other organization from called Aid for Women. So every time I would go to Aid for Women, I was also able to get like stuff for my baby if he needed clothes or if he needed toys. And it was also, again, like I would just go to classes, weekly classes, you know, we would watch a video. And I was very lucky to have that because I didn't have a job. So I didn't have any like income to buy my baby the stuff he needed. So I was very lucky to find those organizations to help me out.
Thank you. Destiny, how about you? Tell us about your homelessness experience prior to the pandemic, any support that you were able to receive in New Orleans.
I was able to receive support in New Orleans, but some of the things, some of the barriers, or I would say that hindered me from finding housing was not having anyone in my corner after foster care. So when I did come to the Congressional House and I received housing during COVID, the only thing that impacted me was not being able to be hands-on with school because my major is really hard, so I have to like be hands-on. I'm a hands-on learner, and when I got to do something online, my brain kind of shuts down, and it made me not really able to focus. And then my nanny died due to Corona too, so I was mentally like out of it. I couldn't even do it mentally, but I can say that the Covenant House has held me up a lot during COVID and has called and asked if I needed any food. I have been getting mental health from a therapist at the Covenant House, has been coming to see me weekly. So that's something that that helped me as well along the way with the pandemic and stuff. And I also got into a really bad altercation with my child's father. He was very abusive as well, and I was in the hospital. So that's another thing that that was prior to the pandemic. That was like right before the pandemic happened, probably in March, right before this shutdown. And it was hard because I had to go to the hospital and my eardrum was busted and I was limping and I couldn't walk, and I had to go by Corona people who had COVID, you know, and be in there with them and be probably able to catch it, but I was just in there with peace because I know that I was going to be better. But it was just hard for me as before the pandemic mentally. So when the pandemic happened, it impacted me even more mentally.
Thank you for sharing. Freda, how?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So a little bit about my homeless experience. Well, it had a lot of downs to it because I am a single parent of 5 kids. So here in Cincinnati, Ohio, they don't have a lot of family shelters. They only have shelters for single individuals who is on alcohol and drugs. And by me not being on alcohol or drugs, and I don't look like I'm homeless, it was hard for me to get help. Everybody kept turning me down. I did have a part-time job. That's actually how I survived. I tried to stay with my sister, but it didn't work out. I got 5 kids. She had a lot of kids, and she had a abusive boyfriend that was there who was verbally and emotionally abusive to I couldn't take it there anymore. I would have ended up in jail. You know, I can't have nobody mistreating my kids while I'm trying to make money and make sure they go to school and stuff. So I started sleeping in hotels. Here in Cincinnati, the Free Source Food Bank helped me for a week. Their funding ran out. They didn't have a lot of funding. There's a lot of homeless people in Cincinnati. So that program was the only program that helped me with shelter for a week. Throughout that whole first year of me being homeless, I did get help with food from certain places like St. Vincent de Paul, Seven Hills Neighborhood House, the Vineyard Church, a couple of churches, making sure I have food, and even Children's Hospital gave me a couple of gift cards for food. Oh, and also I cannot leave them out. They've been a big help with getting my kids back and forth to school, book bags, school supplies. Project Connect. Project Connect has helped me out. They couldn't help me with shelter, but they helped me out with stuff that I needed for my kids so they could stay in school. That was a big thing for me. That was the only goal out of all these downfalls of being homeless. And the thing that I was worried about is 2-for-1 kids. I didn't want my kids to be taken away from me just because I'm homeless. So I made sure that they went to school every day. They stayed in sports. That's what kept my kids going and to get their focus off the homeless situation. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain freeze right now.
Okay.
So I realized we have a homeless hotline here called 381 SAFE. It's supposed to be for families. I will call every day for a whole year. I called. I told them my situation. They know I got 5 kids. And I realized they kept asking me, like, well, where did you sleep at night? And I'm like, well, me and my kids slept on somebody's floor. Okay, we'll call you if we got something available. No calls. And then I realized I actually got a lie. I started saying we slept outside. Some nights we did sleep outside. But that's when I noticed these people, they're not trying to help me unless I'm sleeping up under the bridge or something. So I had to start saying that. And actually, a year and a half later is when they actually gave me a chance. I kept saying, I'm sleeping outside, I'm sleeping outside. They put me in a family shelter. I was actually in there for one day. It was so filthy, unsafe. The doorknobs was broke. Beds was broken. I couldn't even sleep. It was too unsafe for me. So I went on ahead and left. And found somebody's house to stay over. And then COVID hit.
Yeah. And that's where we are right now. Everything that you've described, right? A lot of obstacles, a lot of barriers, people and programs supporting you the best way that they can, but a lot of times having limitations, right? Having to lie just to get the support that you need. But as we all know, whether we were experiencing homelessness or not, when COVID hit, things changed and things shifted for a lot of people. How did the pandemic impact you and your children, April?
Wow. The pandemic was devastating. By the time the pandemic had hit, I had been approved for benefits. I was placed in, like I said, hotel shelter placement February the 20th, after much like the last guest just shared, after, lying and saying, okay, I'm in the car tonight, and continuing to call. And they finally gave us hotel shelter placement, which was far away. They closed down the schools. They'd started this online school. My kids could not do it because we were in a hotel with unstable Wi-Fi. So I couldn't have 4 kids, not to mention I didn't have computers. The school district, thankfully, 2 weeks later was able to give the kids loaner computers. But, I was out trying to like find a job, even still in the midst of the pandemic on the train. They were complaining, we can't log on, the internet's not working. It was just horrible. You know, I'm going to give you guys an instance that was just completely unbelievable. And I I was so depressed. My kids were depressed. I watched my 9-year-old son lay in the bathtub on a sleeping sleeping bag, because he did not want to be in the same bed as his 10-year-old sister because he's a boy. I was so depressed. I went downstairs. There's a bar downstairs in the hotel. I went down there and I sat down there. And I guess, you know, truckers, because where they place you doesn't matter. People from all over can come in. So you can't let your like kids, you know, outside. They hadn't closed down the place yet. So I'm down there and I'm just looking sad. I'm just, you know, sitting in the area, and someone who is staying there, who has seen me, you know, before with my kids, seeing us come in and out, you know, he comes over and he's speaking to me, and he's looking at the homelessness on me. He's looking at the desperation and the 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 pain, and now he wants to pray. So now he says some things that are offensive because he feels like he can help my situation. And no level of homelessness should create that type of shame. You know, here I am, and somebody can just look at me and see the homelessness on me while I'm here dragging these kids through this hotel. Four of them who just have all these people, you know, coming in and out, construction workers. I got teenage daughters. And so because I look desperate, they just assumed, you know what I mean, that I would go for anything, or I would do anything. I walked out of that place with, I can't even begin to explain the level of shame I felt. And one thing I want you guys to understand about homelessness is that every feeling, every notion that you experience can't be statistically measured. It just can't be statistically measured, because there is no way that you can measure the feelings of hopelessness that people are feeling homeless during this pandemic. My kids couldn't leave the room. They couldn't go to the ice machine. There was nothing. We were on the highway, Route 46 in New Jersey. We were on the highway. There was no park to take them to. There was no place to run. I stayed in that hotel from February the 20th until April the 16th. I'm sorry. No. Forgive me. I stayed in the hotel from February the 20th until June the 16th. And so my kids had nowhere to go, nowhere to be, no outlet. I found a job. They were angry at me because I'm leaving and they can't. It affected me in ways. My daughter was drawing mortifying pictures and just being depressed. I had to put myself in therapy to be able to balance so that they didn't see the pain in my face every day. And I'm 40. I can't imagine what some 20-year-old is doing in a room locked in with her kids. That's where the options come in. That's where people give up on themselves. Hopelessness sinks in, and they do things that they wouldn't necessarily or generally do. This COVID and homelessness has become so devastating. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, April. You mentioned the hotel having spotty Wi-Fi and not having access to technology. I'm just curious, how did your children make it through that? Was there any support that, whether it's an organization or a school, was able to provide, just so that there wouldn't be more learning loss during that time, specifically for your children?
At that time, just pre-COVID, I had signed up for a program called Family Promise. Family Promise was getting ready to place me in their program. However, the way their program works is that you stay at shelters at night and a day center during the day. Churches at night and a day center during the day. Well, COVID came, and so they couldn't do that. So what ended up happening is, even though they couldn't place me or take me physically into their program, they started to provide me other services. They brought me a printer and printer paper. They came and they brought school supplies. I didn't have a kitchen. They place you in a hotel room with a kitchenette. So if you can only buy TV dinners, there wasn't anything that you could feed, your kids. And so Family Promise has a program where they actually have volunteers of people who cook families dinner and bring them to you every night. And so that became helpful, and they brought school supplies and things like that. So I was able to communicate with the schools that my kids were going to and ask them if my kids could actually physically just do the work, and I drop it off to the different schools, or someone meet me to pick up the work because they couldn't work online. It was just impossible with the hotel Wi-Fi. And then my kids just became so discouraged. They just didn't want to do the work at all because they felt so hopeless. I had nothing to take away from them if they didn't do their work. What was I going to take away? Nothing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Julie, how about you? Can you tell us how the pandemic has impacted your experience, specifically for you and your little one?
Yeah, so when COVID hit, I was actually still in school, like the semester was not over yet. So our professor I was only taking one class at the time because they took my financial aid away when I dropped out of school when I had my baby. And when I went to talk to the financial aid office, they said, well, there's nothing we can do because you still enrolled in school, even though you knew you were going to have your baby. So they had me on probation for the next semester. And then they just completely took my financial aid away, and I was not working. So I didn't have money to be full-time enrolled in school. So I was only taking one class. And when COVID hit, we ended up changing our classes to online classes. And it was really hard because I was at home with my baby. He was like just starting to crawl. I didn't have no internet at home. And it was like, I can't even like take my classes. And if I'm paying for this class out of pocket, then like I have to pass it because I'm not going to just waste my money. So I ended up, emailing my school, letting them know. They actually ended up sending me a Wi-Fi box saying, okay, we're going to like let you borrow this Wi-Fi box for you to finish this semester. And then you're going to have to send it back when the classes are over. And I was like, okay. So I was able to finish my class online for the rest of like what the semester was. Because of COVID, it was even harder for me to apply for jobs. I had already been looking for a job ever since I gave birth to my baby. But I was like 18 when I started like, looking for jobs and stuff. And they would always tell me the same thing, like, oh, we need someone with experience. You've never had a job. And I'm just like, well, I need a job. Like, I need experience. A lot of places don't want to hire you because you've never worked before. And so I had an even harder time looking for a job. And then I decided to just take a break from school because I had to save money so that I could go back to school next semester. I finally got hired about a month ago. I started working at a Family Dollar store, and it's like so hard because I'm like so scared that I catch something and I come home to my baby, and my baby is so small, like his immune system is not even like healthy enough to fight something. So it's like really scary for me to go to work every day and come home and feeling like I'm not, I'm not able to take care of my son like I want to. So now my school has been emailing me too, saying like, oh, we're only doing classes online. And I know classes online, my one class was really hard for me. So I know if I become a full-time student online, it's just gonna be too much. If I have my baby here with me, my one class I was taking, it was really hard for me. I didn't know whether to pay attention to my professor, write my notes, or take care of my baby. And it was like really hard. Like I didn't know what to do. And I felt like my school was not even understanding of my situation. I went and I told them I was homeless. I took them the letter from the shelter. I took them letters that I needed, like, my financial aid back. And they literally just said, there's nothing we can do, because they pretty much just said it was my fault. And it's like, like I felt like at that moment, I felt like, what do I do? Do I just drop out of school? I don't want to drop out of school because I want to, give my son a better future. So what do I do? Do I work? Do I go to school? Do I take care of my son? And it was just like a very like hard situation for me, because you just don't know what to do anymore. You don't know what to put your priorities first, and now like I can't even, because of the pandemic again, a lot of the resources that I had before, I didn't have them anymore because they stopped. I couldn't go to Aid for Women to get diapers for my baby. So it was like, what is my baby gonna wear now? New moms, they stopped the home visits because of the pandemics. And it's just like, okay, well then where am I gonna get my baby the stuff he needs if I'm not working? I keep applying here and I apply there and I don't get hired anywhere. Like, what am I gonna feed my son, you know? But now, like, I guess things are starting to like calm down a little bit and I started working. Hopefully I save money to go back to school next semester because I don't want to completely drop out of school. Even if I am only taking one class at a time, it's just something I want to do. I don't want to stop going to school. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Destiny, how about you and the impact of the pandemic on you and your daughter?
So as I said once before, it was school that impacted me and my sanity too, because when you're in quarantine, you're thinking about a lot, and mentally that can be draining. That can be a good thing, and that can be a bad thing. But for me, it was a bad thing because I had a really hard dark past. So this COVID going on helped me think about my past and helped me think about school and how I wasn't doing the best because of everything that was going on. How I wasn't the best mom because my baby was teething and then I wasn't able to go and get nothing for her because I was broke. That's before like the government started being really generous, giving out stimulus and stuff. So I didn't have nothing to help my baby with. I barely had milk. I actually did not have milk because my WIC card was stolen by my child's father. So I didn't even have my WIC. So yeah, I had to start back breastfeeding. No milk was coming out. I had to find things for her to eat. I had to borrow milk from a friend. It was just really a lot that impacted me. I did not want to get her sick. And I don't have family members like that because I was in the foster care system as well. But I had like a few friends I made to get by, but it impacted me mentally good too because it helped me to get some faith, and things was like not in my favor in the beginning. During COVID, nothing was in my favor, and then things started like unraveling and things started like getting better as I kept having faith. So I am happy that that happened. It's just that my housing situation was the only thing that kept me going, because if I was living with someone else or if I was in a shelter, I know that I probably would be like rock bottom, because I just going through a pandemic and being underneath someone else's roof is very, very like. So that's one thing that I am very thankful about. It impacted my employment because I didn't have anything to provide to my daughter. And I was working when I was pregnant, but I wasn't working enough. So I didn't have nothing saved, nothing to fall back on. I didn't have nobody but me. My baby is all she have. She doesn't have nobody else, like no grandparents, nothing, just me. So I had to just, everything I had to just keep giving it to my child, which is not a problem. It's just that I don't have anything left to pay my bills with. I don't have nothing left to get milk, stuff that she really needs. So I found an organization, and when I did get my WIC card back, the lady at the WIC office gave me free diapers. She gave me a free Starbucks card for coffee, and she gave me a couple other little goodies in the bag, and that helped me out tremendously. But I am thankful for the Covenant House a lot because they have texted me and asked me did I need anything due to Corona and did I need anything for Cali. So that has helped me a lot too. When they started seeing that how bad the pandemic was affecting their residents and people that they have housed, they had to put their foot in, and they have been a really big help for me. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. Freda, how about you?
Okay. How did the COVID impact the homeless situation? Well, before the COVID hit, I was in the process of making a turnaround. Like I said before, I had a part-time job. So with that part-time job, I didn't even have enough income to get a market rent apartment. Where I stay, a 3-bedroom is $900, but 1-bedroom is $750. So I didn't have enough income to get a market rent apartment. I was in the process of getting new jobs. I went to school to be what was that, like January, February, I was going to school to be a network infrastructure technician. So I'm like, with this trade, and I'm already interviewed with a couple of people, they ready to hire me, I'll be able to afford an apartment. But boom, COVID hit. They shut down. I still end up graduating and getting my certificate, but I couldn't get the job. Everything shut down here. All the programs for homelessness shut down. Apartment building offices shut down, so you couldn't go in and fill out an application. The federal building shut down, so I couldn't get Social Security cards, and Job and Family Services shut down. I couldn't get the stuff that I need to move forward. I got to say, with the schools did shut down, but we was able to get tablets. Our cable company here is called Spectrum. Spectrum was giving out discount Wi-Fi for Cincinnati public schools. So my kids were still able to go to the online school with the discounted Wi-Fi. And I also had teachers, because they knew I was in a homeless situation, they will come and drop off packets, work packets for my kids to do. So all my kids passed to the next grade, thank goodness. But with me, like I said, I'm staying in someone else's house who is afraid of the COVID, which is difficult. Me and my kids sleeping on the floor. My kids tired of sleeping on the floor. They don't want to see me go. And also, I did get sick. I had to quarantine for 14 days in somebody else's house. So that was like really kind of difficult. I couldn't work. I wasn't getting no income in. The only thing that I was getting was help with school. Cincinnati Public Schools, they helped me with school, and also Project Connect. I didn't get the new jobs. I had 2 new jobs lined up with Children's Hospital and with the Census Bureau. I got hired for them too, but they shut down due to COVID, and they still shut down at the moment. So I haven't been able to start those. Also, I didn't have no transportation. The Metro buses, they kind of ran when they want to run, because of the COVID. So it was hard to get to jobs, get to the places that I need to get to. Thanks to the stimulus check, I was able to get a van. I could have tried to get an apartment, but like I said, the office was shut down. I wanted to be mobile so I can get to where I need to go. So I invested my stimulus check into a van, and that has helped me out tremendously. But right now, I'm still in someone else's apartment, and they gave me to the end of July. I got to the end of July, and I got to go, which I respect that. Some people, they don't want to catch COVID. They're afraid because I still got my part-time job and I work in a grocery store. People at the grocery store in my job with Amazon, they've been catching COVID. So every day I worry about catching it, and I don't want to bring it back home to my 5 kids, but I still got to make money so I can try to save up and still try to support me and my 5 kids. So that's how it's affected me. Some stuff here is still shut down. It just slowed me down tremendously.
Thank you, Freda, for sharing. Congressman Davis, I didn't know if you had a question. I saw you nodding intently. I didn't know if you had a question or comment that you wanted to make right now. You're muted. No, can't hear you yet.
Okay.
We can hear you
All
now.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I've participated in hundreds and perhaps thousands of hearings during my lifetime, but I've never been as impacted by any of them that I've ever been in before to this extent. It just occurred to me that each one of these young women are absolute sheroes, real troopers, who, in spite of odds, have demonstrated the real essence of personhood and are people to be admired, respected, and assisted in any way that we possibly can. I mean, you renew within me a desire as well as an effort to try and convince all of my colleagues and all of those who are decision makers anywhere around the country to do more, to find additional money, additional resources, create additional ways and approaches. So that's what I really wanted to say. And I did want to ask Julie one question, because I am familiar with the organizations. I see the night ministry almost every day when I leave out of my office. They're often parked out on the street doing things for people. I think they were the first organization that you came into contact with or made contact with. How helpful
Yes,
were they to you? What were they
very.
really able to do for you?
Well, other than like providing like the resources, like they're the ones that told me about new moms. They're the ones that told me about Aid for Women. They're the ones that helped me get on the waiting list so I could get my apartment. They're the ones that took me to the public aid office to apply for my link card. When I got denied, my case manager went with me again. Like, you know, like they really went out of their way. I joined their Youth for Truth cohort. I did 3 cohorts. I went to their national conference in Florida this past November. And other than just giving me like resources, they were just like, you know, like it just feels like they treat you like a human. Like they don't just see you as a homeless youth, like they see you as a person. And like I really made friendships with the people in there, not just, oh, like, you know, you're my case manager, you're gonna help me get this. Like it wasn't even just that. It was, I really made friends there. And not even friends, like, you know, a lot of them feel like family. Like, you know, we celebrated my baby's 1-year-old, they got him a cake. And it's just like, it's so, that's why I feel like I got so lucky that the night ministry was the organization that I was in, because they were so helpful and so like caring and nice to me. And you know, like being 19, being sexually abused for over 5 years, it really makes you feel like you're worthless. I never ever in my whole life thought I was gonna be homeless with a 1-year-old.
Well, bless you all. I've got to run off to another meeting, but you're all champions, real champions, and you are a credit to the human race. Thank you so much, and I've got to run. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I was muted. Thank you, Congressman Davis, for your words. And thanks to all of you for sharing, for your courage, for your resilience, to just speak your truth, better informed leader in politics. Before I turn it back over to Barbara and we open it up to the attendees for Q&A, 30 seconds or less, what is the main thing you want leaders and policymakers to know and consider when they are designing housing options and resources for parents and families like you? April.
There's no box. There's no box. When I think about the questions, and I understand that they have to have a template and they have to start somewhere. But I think that, this whole idea or concept that battered, abused, disabled, the face of homelessness is not the same. I'm very well spoken. I had an 8th grade education until I was 32 years old. I went back to school for my kids' sake. I'm employable. I'm hardworking. I don't have a negative history or a criminal record, but I wasn't exempt from being homeless. And so the face of homelessness is just not what people imagine it to be. It's not missing teeth. It's not, it's not what it used to be anymore. And I think that cap has to just be removed. And when they sit down and think about the questions and how they survey, because like a senator was saying in the beginning of the meeting, is that we don't get counted. My biggest hardship throughout the whole process is I didn't count. If I wasn't able to advocate for myself, I honestly don't know where I would be. So if I was a 21-year-old girl or an 18-year-old girl, I would have been completely lost in my situation in the dead of winter with my children. And so that affects me when I think about the fact that it doesn't have a face. I'm glad that I mentioned earlier that you can't see me, because homelessness has no face, the one you see now.
I was muted. Thank you, April. Julie.
Yeah, well, I just want a lot of, I guess the people that are the ones that make these decisions and these choices to know that, like, there's a lot, kind of like she said, you can't point someone and just say, they're homeless for a reason, because you don't know the reasons. A lot of people just think, especially I feel like with young moms, they think, oh, she must have been doing crazy things or stuff like that. And there's a lot of different reasons why we're going through what we're going through, and it's not our fault. Like, a lot of times people like to blame us and say that we're in here because we did something wrong, and that's not the case. And I feel like a lot of the times people are just not understanding of why everything happens.
Thank you, Julie. Destiny.
What do I want some policymakers to change? That's the question is.
Yes.
Well, some things they can change are safe havens for kids, because when I was growing up, and I'm 21 now, but when I was growing up, my adoptive dad was my abuser, and he was like looked at as Mr. Huxtable. I don't know if y'all know about Mr. and Mrs. Huxtable, but it was perfect, and no one thought that he would do anything wrong, but he did wrong to me. So kids like that are looked at like demon child. You're just like wicked if you was to even speak badly on, his on someone's name who's helping out the community. By him being a foster parent, that's him helping out the community, I guess, in his eyes. But he had secret agendas with me, and I didn't have the right adults asking me the right questions. I had a therapist for 8 years, and she was not asking me the right questions. So what I would say will be, because if somebody asked me the right question about what he was doing to me, I'm pretty sure I would have said it, and I'm pretty sure he would not be a foster dad right now to this day. So they need to have child developers in the communities, at least safe havens, for kids to be able to feel comfortable. Because when you're asking children about sexual questions, they're not going to just, well, I'm not a child developer, but they're not going to just say it. Like, you have to ask them the right questions, is what I'm saying. And when you have the right adults asking the right questions, that can really help out a lot with children that's going through things that they can't talk about, because I was told not to say anything. So because I didn't say nothing, I thought that it was still okay what he was trying to do to me, but it wasn't. So, and I didn't know that until I became an adult. So I would say that we need safe havens in the communities and safe havens in schools. And they need to be able to stop the cycle in the beginning and not let it lead out to being an adult. Because when you let it lead out to being an adult, it looks like it just looks real bad, and everything's just, and because it's the only support system I ever had, that's the only bridge I ever had, and I burned that bridge. I had to rebuild it back up, but I had to rebuild it back up by saying I lied. He didn't try to do that, but it really was the truth. And I don't want someone to have to say they lied just because that's the only family they know, or that's the only thing they have, because they real people don't have, like, they don't have nobody else. And when you in foster care, people say you burn your bridges and all of that when you get put out and stuff, but you really don't have no bridges to burn, because there was never no bridge. You never had nobody, especially if you're in foster care. It's really seldom you find somebody who really have your best interest at heart. No one really has anyone's best interest at heart unless they really care about that person. So I feel like a lot of foster parents do it for selfishness reasons, like money, or for like free, benefits from the government. So I just think that also they need to find, when they do foster care, they need to find people who are more genuine, not people who are just trying to get something out of the deal. Like people who are really trying to do it to help our children, and really trying to, like, not break them, but make them a better person and make them better from their circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Freda, final words before we turn it back over.
I just want the policymakers to consider that everyone that is homeless is not homeless by choice. That they done got into a situation that they can't get out of. Something devastating has happened. And it's people out there that look like me, clean, who's working, taking care of their family, taking care of their kids. But it's rules to this, like a 3-year eviction rule. Once you have an eviction on your record, you got to wait 3 years just to get an apartment, because your eviction got to be 3 years old. I just want them to consider that everybody who is homeless is not on drugs, not on alcohol, that people is really out here trying to do better, and they want better. And I just wish that the policymakers will try their best to get more affordable housing, or family shelter programs, anything to help people get up out the situation that they're in and to be more successful.
Thank you, Freda. Thank all of you. Barbara.
Thank you, April, Freda, Julie, and Destiny. Yorri emailed me right before this, and she said the phrase unfiltered truth. And that is what you have provided this afternoon. So we thank you for your unfiltered truth. Now more than ever, we need that as policymakers come together to figure out how to tackle this next piece around the pandemic. And thank you, Yorri, too, for facilitating the conversations, getting to know our expert panelists, and bringing us all together. I want to take just a little bit to go over some of the policy asks and the urgent asks we have for Congress, and then we have a little bit of time for some questions and answers from our audience. So the 4 organizations who have put together this briefing, we do support broader efforts around housing, employment, education, childcare, healthcare, economic stimulus payments, the total package, because as we've heard here, this is a multifaceted challenge affecting children and parents and families. Some of the specific pieces that we are advocating for right now as Congress comes together are listed on this next slide. The Emergency Family Stabilization Act, introduced in the Senate and soon to be introduced in the House, will provide direct funding to community-based agencies to provide emergency services related to housing, education, childcare, am I getting a little bit of feedback? I don't know if I can, okay, I think it finally went away there. That legislation would not require a family to meet HUD's definition of homeless. Several of you spoke about not meeting the criteria because of where you were staying or other conditions. So the broader definition of homelessness that is used by schools, staying with somebody temporarily, staying in motels, as April described, you would be considered eligible for help through a wide variety. Also, we are specifically advocating for more help for schools, specifically programs like Project Connect, which Ms. Mason talked about, and all the help that they're doing. Right now, that program, the Education for Homeless Children program, is the only federal education program specifically focused on children, youth, and families who are experiencing homelessness, and making sure that there's continuity in education. I'm thinking, Julie, about how you heard about the night ministry through a teacher, and thinking about the various connections, Destiny, too, in terms of your education, and April, the support that your children were provided. So that's another big advocacy ask. We're also asking for more funding for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act program, for programs like the night ministry, programs like Covenant House, to be able to support our youth and young adults, including those who are parenting, and also asking for changes in housing policy to recognize the face of homelessness that April and all of you have described, so it is broader and more reflective of how children and youth experience homelessness. Those are our urgent policy asks. And I think if we can go to the next slide, I want to send over Yorri a question right now, a couple more, and then we'll wrap up at 3:30, but I do want to take a couple of questions that we have from our audience.
So the first question is for April. Someone wants to know if you think families experiencing homelessness struggle with exposing their homeless status through virtual learning. The families we work with have stated so and simply stopped participating in online learning.
Oh, wow. To answer that question, absolutely. I'll tell you, I moved to Chatham, New Jersey, which is a very upper echelon part of New Jersey, because I believed that I was going to be able to give my kids the best education possible. It was part of the reason I chose to stay with a friend there. Once I lost housing in Chatham, they actually don't even have any housing options, period. They don't even have a program for it. If you can't afford to live there, then you can't be there. So they were not really receptive. I have a daughter who has an IEP. An IEP is like intervention learning services, because maybe they have like a delay in reading or things like that. And I was so overwhelmed, and I felt like I completely just stopped. I stopped everything. My kids stopped doing their work. And so I understand. And yes, it's embarrassing. Here I am. I just moved to this state in this great neighborhood, being able to give my kids a great education. And, they were emailing me, parents were emailing, and, they were wanting to connect kids and all of these things. And my kids were missing activities that they were doing online, and FaceTiming for class and things like that. Well, I don't even have a computer. So how are my kids we don't have iPhones, but the teachers are saying, hey, let's FaceTime. Well, my kids don't have iPhones or cell phones. And so, of course, it absolutely, it just kind of rips you of your dignity, because when you're already in a low place, what do you do when you feel defeated? And so I would agree with that 110%. It's very difficult, especially for moms of multiples. You know what I mean? I have 2 middle school students, 2 elementary school students, and it was completely difficult when you have 16 teachers emailing you at one time, and you're so overwhelmed, and you don't even know how you're going to cook dinner inside of a hotel room in a crock pot. It's like you kind of weigh the odds. What do I have to do? You know what I mean? And you don't want to explain your situation to each and every single teacher. So at some point, you're just like, forget it. You know what I mean? They'll just have to, you've put it off, basically. You know what I mean? And so that's exactly what happens. That feeling of overwhelmness, feeling defeated. Like I said, if you have middle school students, you got 16 teachers. If you got 4 kids, you got, it's so overwhelming, especially when you don't have the resources.
Thank you, April. Any other final things that any of you want to say before we close?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If y'all can hear me, I just wanted to say something to the ladies. I just want to tell y'all to stay strong. We all have so much power within us, you wouldn't even know. Keep pushing. Everybody has a story. We can all write a book. Do not give up, period. We can't give up. We all have children. Show your kids how strong you are. When my kids came to me and they said, hey, mama, you done been robbed, you done been shot at, you still standing. We homeless, but you still standing. You still moving forward. We got so much power within us. Just move forward and believe in yourself. And trust me, you will get to where you need to be. This is not the end. It's just the beginning to a beautiful future that you are going to have. And that's what I wanted to say to the ladies.
Thank you for that. I wanted to say to the policymakers, and this is April speaking, one of the things that I experienced throughout my whole process in homelessness is that some of the agencies don't have any accountability. When you have people who are already down in a low place within themselves, and you walk into an agency and you are treated where they won't even look up and look at you in your face, these people are receiving grants and funds, and then you sign up for these programs and you get a gift card in the mail and you get a t-shirt, but that's the extent of it. There are thousands of programs, but most of them are what you call referral services. You call one place and they send you to the next. You call one place and they send you to the next. We are in need of agencies that provide direct service, because you become discouraged. The information that's put out there is not always made visible. When I was denied benefits for my cash benefits and my food stamp benefits, yes, I was told that I could appeal it and request a hearing. But how was I going to get there? No information was shared to me that the agency itself had to provide me a way to get there. Those small details that are available to us when we're sitting around 3 and 4 hours in the lobby, share that type of information. Share the information that is valid. And it's like the level of human kindness, it just doesn't exist. And I think that they need to be accountable. Your jobs are in place because of people that are in need. So when you walk into a room and somebody's already low and their head down and they already feeling bad, somebody should be accountable to their staff to make them look up and say, hello, how was your day? Good morning. Not next. Those things matter, because for people that are already on the verge, for people that are already broken, it could be that one nasty attitude or that one last comment that sends you into defeat of your own self. And so I ask that they consider, when you have these agencies, that you guys put policies in place to ensure that they take into considerations the mindset of the communities that they serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? It's okay if you don't. Okay. I'm going to take that as a no. As we close, I definitely want to extend gratitude again to you, Barbara, for organizing, for putting the policy charges out there, to the Congressman, specifically Congressman Davis and Stivers, who was able to join and listen and will take this information back to their colleagues, but specifically to you, April, Julie, Destiny, and Freda. Thank you today for your stories, for your bravery, for your truth, for just being willing to speak your truth to power. Know that by sharing your stories with us, you have certainly inspired me, right? And I'm sure every other person who has listened and who is listening to do more for you, and specifically for moms and children in our communities. And just know that you are an inspiration. Congressman Davis said it. You are our sheroes and heroes who inspire us to kind of keep pushing forward unrelentingly, right? So that we can kind of get things moving for you and other young moms and families like yourselves in this nation, so that no one has to experience many of the horrible things and tragic things that you have experienced and are still experiencing. So thank you for your time and for your voice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll just close with, for those of you who are watching online, some resources on the slides about all of our organizations. And on the final slide, if you could advance just ways to stay in touch on social media. And again, we'll have another briefing next week with youth and family providers and some McKinney-Vento liaisons as well on, I believe it's Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern. So invite you to join that. And again, just want to thank again our amazing expert parent panelists and Yorri, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Yeah, have a good day.